We really got into ancient Egypt this day by visiting two important religious sites. I took so many photos that I'm going to divide up the day into two sections and begin the first section with our arrival at Abydos. Around 6:30 in the morning, our riverboat docked and we began to explore our first major ancient temple. This picture here shows the former causeway that connected the temple with the Nile and the entrance to Abydos, the cult center of the god Osiris. Osiris was the god who judged and cared for the dead. Although not as powerful as Ammon, he, his wife, and son Horus were the most popular and beloved of the gods. People from all over Egypt would try to make a pilgrimage to Abydos at least once in their lifetimes, as do modern Muslims go to Mecca. It was also a very popular place to be buried, and the ancient town had several large cemeteries and many temples. You might say this was the forest lawn of the ancient world. The only surviving temple is the cenotaph temple of Seti I. It was built as a cenotaph, or empty tomb, for, you guessed it, the god Osiris, about 4,000 years ago during the reign of Seti I. Inside the entrance, you enter a huge room with a massive stone roof held up by equally massive stone pillars. A room like this, filled with pillars, is called a hypostyle hall. Notice that the original decoration of the ceiling can still be seen. Looking deeply into the temple, you can see how the rooms line up with the holiest shrine deep within the temple. Much of the reliefs on the wall are propaganda telling how Seti I was favored by the gods, Thoth to the left and Horus to the right. Here's a close-up of Thoth, the god of wisdom. Here he is showering blessings, and notice that the colors are still present. Horus, god of earthly rule, is showering his blessings too. Notice that they are all ankhs, the symbol of abundant life. I mean, like this guy was walking hand in hand with some pretty important gods. And not to be forgotten, the pharaoh is giving presents to Osiris himself. Here's a relief of showing Horus giving the old man Osiris an affectionate pat on the back. And here's the pharaoh with a battle mace and the battle crown or helmet on. To the right of this picture is the opening to the holiest part of the temple, a small shrine room that probably housed the statue of Osiris. To the left of the entrance is the Lady Isis feeding the gift of life, an ankh, to the pharaoh. And on the other side of the shrine room is Horus giving the pharaoh a friendly pat on the head. I believe this and the next four pictures are from inside the shrine room itself. By the way, all the pictures I took were made without flash and without a tripod. I had to hold the camera really steady. They actually turned out better than I expected, but my Fuji S5000 is a super camera. Here's a photograph of the relief cut into the stone wall of the temple of a solar boat. This is the boat that takes the dead to the halls of Osiris. Notice that the colors are still visible. The Goddess Isis is often shown breastfeeding and thereby providing nourishment to young pharaohs and to her son Horus. This is looking down the row of columns with the entrance to the small shrine room to the right. To the rear of the temple of Seti is the tomb of Osiris, part of which is underwater. The above-ground cenotaph, or empty tomb. Inside Osiris' cenotaph, there are more reliefs. Here's the pharaoh having a friendly little chat with Osiris. Notice that Osiris is almost always shown with a blue face and wrapped up as a mummy. I mean, if you meet a god and he has a blue or black face, 9 times out of 10 it's Osiris. Don't forget that. It may come in handy sometime. Well, we returned back to the boat for lunch and to get ready for the bus ride to Dendera. The Lady Hathor was a really interesting person as goddesses go. Her name means House of Horus because she was married to Horus. She was supposed to have been the creator god Ra's daughter. The story goes that after creating the world, Ra liked Egypt so much that he put on a human body and made himself the first king. At first, the Egyptians just loved having a god for a king, but as time went by, having a human body, Ra got real old and turned into a grumpy, crabby, snaggly-toothed old geezer. Everybody made fun of him, and he got no respect. Boy, did this make the old guy mad. So he and his daughter cooked up a plan to fix all those young whippersnappers who were so ungrateful. By the way, at that time his daughter was named Sekhmet. And you didn't want to mess with Sekhmet, let me tell you. Ra didn't have to ask twice for Sekhmet to start killing every Egyptian she could lay her hands on and to drink their blood. She went at it with such a vengeance that the other gods were shocked, and so was Ra, but there was just no stopping her. That night, Ra came up with a plan. He got the god of beer to brew up a huge six-pack, while he got some red clay from Nubia to turn the beer red, like the green beer we drink on St. Patrick's Day. Once mixed, the red beer was poured into the Nile, and it looked just like blood. When Sekhmet woke up, she was real thirsty, so she set out looking to kill some more Egyptians and drink their blood. But then she noticed that the Nile was already full of blood, so she just walked over and started drinking. The more she drank, the drunker she got, and the drunker she got, the more she drank, until she passed out. Next morning, she was way too hungover to kill anybody, and just the thought of drinking more blood gave her the dry heaves. Oh, she was sick. Ra then said, "Okay, Sekhmet, that's enough punishment. You were so out of control. Matter of fact, I'm sending you to anger management." Well, afterwards, she was a changed goddess and started taking classes in happiness, music, and art. Ra liked it and suggested she get married to that nice young Horus god and change her name to Hathor. She said, "Okay, music, beauty, happiness, I can dig it." And that was that. Back in the buses for the drive down to Dendera to see Hathor's temple. The countryside down here was beautiful, but this was September 11th, and our buses were escorted by police cars, motorcycles, and a pickup truck with army guys following behind. Along the way, we passed militia dressed in traditional galabeas and carrying shotguns. I thought these guys looked pretty scary, and I didn't know how the police could tell them from the Islamic rebels. This area is a hotbed for Islamic rebels. However, every time we'd stop, there'd be all this kissing on both cheeks between the police guys and the militia guys, so I guess they knew each other pretty well. In ancient times, the entire complex, which this temple was only a fraction of, was surrounded by high walls. Today the walls are in ruins, and only this precariously balanced entrance remains. Approaching the Temple of Hathor, originally the intricately carved reliefs were painted on with vivid colors, and the building must have presented quite a sight. Still today, it is a very impressive sight, to say the least. Although defaced by early Christians, the tops of each of the huge columns are portraits of the god Hathor. As is typical in ancient temples, Hathor's temple starts with a large room with a massive ceiling held up by many closely spaced huge stone columns. This is called a hypostyle hall. Again, most of the portraits at the top of the columns were defaced, but not all of them. And you can also see the typical hairdo that Hathor is always wearing. Many times, the wives of the pharaohs are shown with this hairdo to show their association with Hathor, the goddess of love and beauty and music. Here's a view from inside to give you some idea of the massiveness of the stonework. The hypostyle hall is to the left of that opening there. And of course, every stone surface was a kind of cartoon that told some story. Here's a kind of blurry shot looking toward the holiest section of the temple. I believe this is the holiest room where the statue of Hathor was kept most of the year. Once a year, with great ceremony, the statue of Hathor was cleaned up, dressed, and taken to the roof of the temple. During the Egyptian New Year celebration, the statue was placed so that the sun could recharge its solar batteries. This is a grand passageway through the walls of the temple leading to the roof. I believe this is the passage they used to move Hathor's statue up and then back again. The temple has many passageways, but none are as decorated or quite as large as this main one. Here's a smaller and narrower passageway that also leads up to the roof. I guess these passageways were for the priests to get around in without being noticed. This passageway leads straight down into a crypt. I had to bribe the guy, but he let me climb down inside. I can't remember just what was in there, but I do remember it was very narrow, and there were some reliefs cut into the stone. For what purpose the crypt was used, I don't know. But it was fun going down just to see every aspect of the temple. Well, by now the exploration of the temple was nearly over. On our way out, we could see the small temple built in Roman times. This temple was dedicated to the birth of Hathor and Horus's son. Near the temple, and originally part of the entire complex, is the very extensive ruins of adobe brick buildings. I couldn't make out the general plan of the large adobe structures, but there were a lot of rooms and cells visible as erosion and time had crumbled the outer walls. Once back on the boat, we set sail upriver back to Luxor, or Thebes as it was known in ancient times. As we traveled along, I noticed the people along the shore, and being an avid rider, I also noticed this guy on an Egyptian pony. The guy was a good rider and sat the horse very well. Approaching Luxor at night, the city looked beautiful, all lit up. Matter of fact, electricity is evidently very abundant in Egypt because even the smallest village is all lit up at night. In the ship's big spotlight, we could see the docking area near the Hilton. We did not dock at the main facilities at Luxor, but we had our own private dock there at the Hilton. I think part of the reason was because our boat was an all-American boat, and being in and around September 11th, the authorities wanted as much security as possible. I was still feeling pretty sick from the plague of Egypt I picked up in Cairo, and I didn't eat much of the fine food that was provided. However, I didn't lose any weight on this trip, and it didn't cause me to miss seeing anything. Anyway, this was the end of a very eventful day, with more to come in the morning.